The Dallas Mavericks defeat Oklahoma City Thunder in 6 games, 117 to 116. And what a game it was to end it on. The Dallas Mavericks really tried to lose this game. They were down the entire game, down at 18 at one point, and fought their way back. Now, first thing, I want to give a shout out to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That man was easily the best player in this series, which Luka was dealing with some injuries, and still had some phenomenal games. But Shai was just outstanding this entire series. Without Shai, this isn't even close. Game 4 would have already been won by the Mavs without Shai. Game 1 even might have been won by the Mavs without Shai. So props to Shai. He's an incredible player. It's hard to overcome my bias and support such a good player instead of hating on him, but here I am. Shai's a great player. Now for the Mavericks, Luka Doncic with a 29-point triple-double. Derrick Jones Jr. and Kyrie Irving both had 22. What a game for Derrick Jones. Another highly efficient 61% from the field and 65% from three. Just an outstanding offensive performance from Derrick Jones, while also playing phenomenal defense on one of the best players in the NBA in Shai for this entire series. Derrick Jones, keep in mind, this man is on a minimum contract. He is going to get paid next season with how he's played throughout the playoffs. And of course, Derrick Jones and PJ Washington got to reap the rewards of the Thunder doubling Kyrie and Luka pretty much every time they touched the ball. And he capitalized on it for sure. PJ got to in the first several games after game 1. But Derrick Jones, the past 4 games, he's averaging like 18 points for that stretch. So awesome stuff from Derrick Jones Jr. And hopefully, I have not heard anything about Maxi Kleber. Is that man coming back at all for the playoffs? If he does, that would be huge in the next series. I honestly thought not having Kleber's 15 to 20 minutes as an option against the Thunder might be the downfall of the Mavericks, but they still overcame that adversity, and hopefully he can be back for the next round. If not that, then of course the finals, if the Mavericks can defeat whoever wins tonight's game between the Timberwolves and Nuggets. So which team do we think the Dallas Mavericks match up better against, the Minnesota Timberwolves or the Denver Nuggets? Personally, I think the Mavericks have a better shot against the Timberwolves, even though their defense is absolutely insane and most likely will give the Mavericks lots of problems. The Denver Nuggets offense is just not something that I want to watch the Mavericks have to try and guard, because they will exploit Luka. They will exploit Kyrie, even though they've been locked in and playing phenomenal defense compared to what they usually do. The Nuggets can definitely exploit that. The Thunder pretty much at all times had 1 or 2 guys that, like, the Mavericks were kind of okay with funneling all the Thunder's offense into. The Nuggets don't have any of those guys. They have Aaron Gordon, but Aaron Gordon is still a guy that can beat you. Now, out of the Nuggets starting 5, Aaron Gordon's definitely the guy you want the offense coming from, but he can still win a game for them, and that's pretty scary, and that's why they won the championship last year. The Nuggets bench, outside of Christian Brown, I don't think they have any other guys that the Mavericks really need to worry about. But the thing is the Nuggets have been riding that starting 5 pretty heavily throughout the playoffs so far, and it's working pretty well. So it's a really tough decision. I mean, we don't make the decision, but it's really tough to decide whether or not you'd want to play the Timberwolves or the Nuggets. And tonight we're going to find out. That's going to be an exciting game to watch. I might even make a video on that. Now for the Timberwolves matchup, Anthony Edwards is a absolutely dynamic offensive player, but we just dealt with one of those in this past series in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And we know that the Mavericks have the capability to defend an offense that's ran primarily through one guy, even if that is a heavy drive and kick offense. That's actually something I haven't really, like, of course, the Thunder's offense throughout the regular season was much better than the Timberwolves, but as far as game plan and execution, they have fairly similar offensive game plans and styles. They do a lot of drive and kick, especially without Mike Conley. The Timberwolves are very similar to the Thunder in that. Of course, similar to the Thunder, they had a lot of guys not hitting threes throughout the playoffs, and that was kind of the bad part of their offense. But then they also had Anthony Edwards just absolutely tearing it up, on top of having practically 4 all defensive first team guys on their roster. So that's a big difference between them and the Thunder. And they still, all those guys are still capable of shooting threes and making them. And that's what can make the Timberwolves ceiling so incredibly high, as well as makes their floor offensively pretty low too. That's why I think I'd take the matchup against the Timberwolves over the Nuggets matchup, just because the Nuggets offensive floor is very high. Like that 40-point blowout from the Timberwolves, that was insane. Like that was an anomaly. That was the Nuggets' lowest scoring playoff game, I think, ever. Was that what the stat was? And the Nuggets have been in the playoffs quite a bit throughout the history of the NBA. Wow, that was ridiculous, especially with having Jokic on the roster at all. Like, how do you only score 70? I don't know. The Timberwolves defense is insane, and that's the thing is, I think the Mavericks would have a much easier time scoring on the Nuggets than scoring on the Timberwolves, but scoring, I don't know. Luka and Kyrie are kind of guys that are impervious to defense in a way. Like, of course, the better defense you play on them, that's going to be a better look for your team. But they're both guys that, like, no matter what you throw at them, typically they still get theirs, or they still are able to create stuff out of nothing. You know, like Kyrie, even when he had 9 points a couple games ago, he still had 10 assists, and he still played phenomenal defense, and he kept Jalen Williams to 8 points that game. They're both guys that figure out ways to do what they need to get done, and that's kind of how Jokic is as well. But I don't think the Timberwolves they don't have a guy like other Anthony Edwards is incredible, and to an extent he's in that same echelon, but he doesn't have the playmaking skills that either Luka or Kyrie have. And outside of him on the roster, Mike Conley can have those games, but he can also have some duds. He's not always going to put up those big assist numbers, which you don't necessarily need the big assist numbers to be a good playmaker, but you know what I'm talking about. They don't have those guys that are just every single night, you know, it is going to be an incredible challenge to keep them under 100 points. And the Nuggets, it's just like, I just don't, I know the Mavericks beat them post-trade deadline in the regular season. I just don't want to play them in 7 games. I just have PTSD from watching them last year, even though we didn't play them. I just have PTSD from watching them in general, watching them in the finals, and how they can execute, how they can finish games. It doesn't even matter if they're down 25, they're still going to win the game. You know what's going to happen. And I don't know. It's a really tough decision. Again, it's not a decision. Tonight we will find out whether or not the Mavericks are playing either of those teams. I talked about that way too long. Now for the Mavericks going into the next series, I think they do carry a lot of momentum. One big benefit is that they do get to rest until Wednesday night, and that is 100% a good thing for Luka. Even though he looked a lot healthier in the past 3 games, he still needs that rest. He's still having moments where he's wincing in pain, he's laboring, and I think having that rest until Wednesday night is going to be a very big benefit, even though throughout the regular season, every time that the Mavericks had more than 2 nights of rest, Luka would come out looking sloppy, but I think it's still going to be a benefit nevertheless. Kyrie Irving, hopefully he can get his shot going against whoever we play next. I think that's the main thing is, like, I don't see the Nuggets or Timberwolves doubling Kyrie as much as the Thunder did, because they have really, really good defenders, and they can rotate really well. But the thing is they don't have those shorter, like, crazy quick foot speed guys to put on Kyrie and Luka at the same time. Like, I'm assuming it's probably going to be Jaden McDaniels on Luka if it's the Timberwolves, and Aaron Gordon if it's the Nuggets. And then after that, like, you kind of have to put Jamal Murray on Kyrie. I mean, you don't have to. You could put KCP, but who are you going to put? If you put Jamal Murray on anyone else, they're going to be able to exploit that size matchup. Like, if they end up having to put Jamal on PJ, like, you saw what PJ did to Shea in a couple of those games in this last series, and Shea's bigger than Jamal. If they put Jamal on Derek Jones, he's just he's great at cutting back door. He's great at, especially this series, spot up 3-point shooting. He's just a bit bigger, so Jamal's not going to be able to contest that very well. On the Timberwolves front, you probably put Conley on Kyrie, and, you know, I like that matchup for the Mavs. There's just a lot to go into this, and I'm really excited to see what happens in the next round. Now, watching the Mavericks execute against the Thunder was just really a sight to behold, because every game you really were just on edge. Like, there was no solidifying performances other than, was it game 5? That was pretty big. Every other game was just like, man, these teams match up really well against each other. The Mavs had the size advantage, but the Thunder had the 3-point advantage. They had the Shea advantage. The Mavs had the Luka injury disadvantage. It was just a really great matchup and super fun to watch overall. And I'm crazy excited for the conference finals like this on both sides. The Knicks, Celtics, or I guess we'll find out if it's the Knicks or the Pacers, but if it is Knicks, Celtics, and Josh Hart and OG are healthy, that matchup is going to be crazy to watch. Brunson is absolutely insane. I don't know if you watched the Knicks, but man, Brunson might have been the best player in all of the playoffs up to this point, like performance-wise. Brunson has been phenomenal. The Knicks legitimately run almost their entire offense through Brunson, and it's still crazy efficient. Even when he's not on ball, they're still running the offense through him off ball. It's wild to watch. I really love watching Brunson still, even though he has left us. Anyways, I will probably keep up with whatever's going on for the rest of the playoffs. This past week I didn't upload at all because my wife and I were moving into a house and I just didn't really have my setup together and we were just busy, and yeah. So expect some more videos this week and next week. I'm going to cover as much as I can for the rest of the playoffs just because all the teams that are involved are extremely interesting and entertaining to watch, and there's just so much coaching going on. That's the other thing. Shout out to Jason Kidd. Even though he had some questionable decisions, putting Tim Hardaway Jr. in for way too much time in several games. Outside of that, though, Kidd was doing phenomenal with calling timeouts at the right times, stopping Thunder runs. This game 6 was a little bit sketchier than the others, but the first after game 1, so 2 through 5, Kidd really just coached way better than I was expecting him to, and I'm so happy he really showed up for that. Let's see if we can finally win a game 1 with Coach Kidd in this next matchup. Stay tuned for more content, and see ya.